Let me ping him. Oh, he's offline.
Bruh.
I know. Oh, he's back online. Okay, let's wait for Simon and
Didn't ask, don't care, plus you're white.
Mm-mm-mm.
Mama. So, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So, who's gonna start first? I'm just wondering.
It doesn't matter to me. Do you want to start first?
I'll let you go with your opening statement.
What?
I'll let you go with your opening statement.
Okay. So, obviously, thank you for engaging in this discussion with me. Um, uh, Basically, I'm going to be arguing that the Jehovah's Witnesses blood doctrine is medically outdated and biblically inaccurate. The core of the doctrine is rooted in a selective interpretation of biblical texts. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the command to abstain from blood extends to medical procedures, including transfusions, as I'm sure you're aware. However, the scriptures they reference, such as Leviticus 17:10-14 and Acts 15:20, just two out of a couple, pertain to dietary restrictions and don't mention transfusions at all. A practice that was simply unknown at the time. Um, and if this is about honoring life, doesn't preserving life through medical treatment uphold the same principle? The allowance of blood fractions in their doctrine adds further complexity. Blood comprises four main parts: red cells, white cells, platelets, and plasma. Jehovah's Witnesses prohibit the whole blood transfusions but permit each component as a fraction. But that raises the question: if these individual parts are morally acceptable, why does combining them make the transfusion unacceptable? By allowing fractions, the doctrine undermines its own reasoning, raising questions about its consistency and absolute basis. And additionally, health risks associated with refusing transfusions are profound. Modern transfusions are extremely safe. The chances of contracting hepatitis or HIV are astronomical. Refusing them, however, often leads to life threatening situations, particularly in emergencies. This is especially concerning when minors are involved, potentially being denied life saving care based solely on a parent's interpretation of Scripture. Finally, consider the ethical concept of piqua nefesh in Jewish law, which allows nearly any religious rule to be set aside to save a life. This principle emphasizes that life itself is sacred above all. Shouldn't saving a life take precedence over the symbolic value of blood? In short, the Jehovah's Witnesses' stance on blood transfusions is inconsistent and selectively interpreted, ultimately prioritizing a symbolic rule over real lives. But yeah, that's basically all I got.
Okay, so I'm gonna start my opening statement, my debate timer. So I would like to thank Nihilist for agreeing to this debate. Uh, he brought up some really good points, but I will answer that in my rebuttals. So, are blood transfusions? Are can a Christian take a blood transfusion? Now, of course, you can do it, but if we look at Scripture, which I will probably respond to his points in my rebuttal, but as we read only flesh in its life, it, its blood you must not eat. In Leviticus 17:14, for the life of every sort of flesh is its blood, because it is life. I said to the Israelites, you must not eat any sort of flesh, eat the blood of any sort of flesh. Anyone eating it will be cut off, and multiple other verses. Now, of course, you could just say it applies to eating, but this mostly applies to consuming it in general. Now, you may say a law, uh, health is over law, but if we look at studies such as one done by the NIH called the Survival Blood Transfusion Recipients Identified by Look Back, we see, as it says, one half of recipients died within the first year of transfusion, and the median time to death was 1.1 years. I would say that, and another study done by PubMed, long-term survival after blood transfusion viewed at 800 individuals and found similar results. I apologize that I kind of missed out on some points, but that's all I gotta say.
Okay. Sorry. Could you just quickly repeat that the first study that you referred to? What it was titled?
Yeah, sure. Oh boy. So the first study was okay. Survival blood transfusion recipients identified by a look back investigation.
Okay, and what was the second one titled?
Long term survival after blood transfusion.
Long-term survival after blood transfusion. Okay. So, is this the part where I give a rebuttal?
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about the scripture, which Leviticus what was it 17:14, and you mentioned it talks about general consumption, but if you actually look at the dictionary's definition of consume, the definition is eat, drink, or ingest, and since a blood transfusion is not either three of those things, because ingestion would be going through the digestive tract, and eating and drinking would also fall along the same as those, it wouldn't apply. And I would also like to reference that the first study that you brought up, survival blood transfusion recipients identified by a look back investigation. First of all, the study focuses on older adults and critically ill patients whose low survival rates do not reflect the general benefits of blood transfusions for healthier individuals. So it already starts off with a biased group of tests or study subjects. And I would also say that I don't think that that study can be put towards the whole of blood transfusions about and showing how it deals with the risks of blood transfusions. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. Because another study from government website, this is Canadian, mind you, but I'm sure that the statistics would look similar in from where you're from. But the chance of getting hepatitis C, it's 1 in 12.6 million. HIV, 1 in 24.4 million. Hepatitis B, 1 in 7.5 million. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't risk, but you have to look at all the other medical devices too. Like, there's a lot of other medical treatments that also have severe risks and side effects that you have to take into consideration and have to understand before taking them. So I think saying that because blood transfusions have health risks, that they shouldn't be considered as an overall good to society, I think that's a very negligent look at it. And that's all I have to say.
So you gave really good responses, and to answer yours, for example, I would have to say, for one, yeah, of course, there's risk in everything, but when you have to look at how big the risk is, which of course I will also get to your response. Well, if half of patients died, which I know if the other study was actually looking at if my first study was looking at terminally ill people, well, of course, but the second study I quoted was only slightly higher and looked at 800 patients, and they got similar results with half of patients dying. Also, where was I lost my train of thought? Sorry. So yeah, so looking at Leviticus and most of the verses, of course, yeah. So we do see it. But if we go to other verses, such as in Acts, we see it's different and not referring to eating. And that's really all I have to say. If you want, because I mean, I lost my train of thought for a moment, but I'll pass it on to you, or if you want to do open dialogue.
Yeah, I'm okay with open dialogue if you want to open dialogue. Again, I'm very confused about your stance biblically. Like, you keep bringing up like how it's different wordage, but it's really not. It's all really still describing the same thing, that it's relating to the meat of flesh that is being consumed, like eaten. It's talking about a dietary restriction. So that argument doesn't really make any sense because, again, it's talking about ingesting blood, not taking a blood transfusion, because obviously the blood transfusions weren't around back then, so how could they have been referring to them in that? So I think bringing that up is very negligent.
Uh, so you raised a good point. So that's actually really good. But when we're still understanding the biblical context, and if we go to the interlinear for Acts 15:20, we see nothing about consuming it. We just see abstain from blood. Nothing about like just eating it, drinking it. Abstain from blood.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. I'll acknowledge that. But now, I would like to also reference something. It's from the Watchtower, September 15th of 1961, and it's titled "Respect the Sanctity of Blood." Let me read it to you real quick. This is paragraph 16 of that. So the question was, is the use of blood in medical treatment to sustain life a violation of God's law? It says, is God's law violated by such medical use of blood? Is it wrong to sustain life by infusions of blood or plasma or red cells or the various other blood fractions? Yes. The law that God gave to Noah and which applies to all his descendants makes it wrong for anyone to eat blood, that is, to use the blood of another creature to nourish or sustain one's life. So you can even see right here that the Watchtower itself contradicts itself. But it says that it even mentions blood fractions by name. That falls under the definition of what should be abstained from, and yet they've changed it in the 2000 to accept blood fractions. So explain that to me. Explain how that makes sense. Where if the scriptural basis is to abstain from blood as a whole, why did they make the exception for blood fractions?
Uh, So that's a really good point. And it's been brought up before. So to answer you, let's say you have a bunch of ingredient. Let's say an analogy here would be, let's say you have an ingredient like let's say you're gonna cook, I don't know, let's say you're gonna make Kool-Aid. So first you get your water, which is separate, and then you get the powder. And of course if you mix it together that makes Kool-Aid, but on their own they're not Kool-Aid. Or for example,
Okay,
sodium
but
in
okay,
itself
but that
is
analogy doesn't really make any sense because even the water that you're referring to in that analogy is made out of hydrogen and oxygen. Everything is made out of something else. Doesn't mean that just because you remove something from it doesn't mean it's not part of that whole blood. What the fractions from red cells and the fractions from white cells, like red cells for example, fractions would be hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is essentially just wrapped in a red cell. The red cell is just essentially a wrapper for the hemoglobin. And hemoglobin, also, the blood fraction is what makes your blood red and pumps oxygen in your blood. So removing that, that's a very, very important component of blood. And you're saying that that's okay to take by itself, but how are you supposed to administer that? It's okay. It's like this. Imagine this analogy. You wouldn't go, you witnessing the truth. You wouldn't go on to say Craigslist and buy a stolen car, would you?
of course I wouldn't.
Yeah, but because let's say that the law says that hot cars like they're illegal. You can't buy them. But what if the person? But so would it make sense to be able to buy the engine from that car or the transmission from that car and not the whole car? No, it's still stolen parts. It's still wrong to be buying that. It's still committing a crime. So same thing applies here. Like just taking fractions in the whole. If the law says abstain from blood, then taking fractions would fall under that pretense, wouldn't it?
Oh, that's a good analogy, and again I would answer by uh saying that even though yeah, the issue comes when like take like very small fractions, or like what would I mean, you actually got me in a logical trap there. So
Here, actually, you know what? I have here's a better question.
okay.
Out of so there's red cells, white cells, platelets, and plasma. Those are unacceptable to take.
Yes.
Correct?
Uh, you can take those as long as they're fractions.
Yes, but I'm saying as a whole, like you
Oh
can't take
yeah.
a whole white cell. Correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay, now let me ask you another question. Are you lactose intolerant?
No.
Do you drink white milk?
Yes.
Were you breastfed?
Yes.
Do you drink chocolate milk?
I love it.
Okay, so under your basis, you have consumed white blood cells. So does this mean that
Mm.
you have biblically broken the law? Because it is the case that in milk there are white blood cells, and in cow's milk, obviously cow's white blood cells, and in breast milk, you are transmitted white blood cells from your mother. So how does that make sense? If you're not supposed to abstain from blood, shouldn't we not breastfeed our children? Should we abstain from drinking milk?
Well, then again, like the issue is like, for example, in the Mosaic Law, that you should kill an animal in the most harmless way. Well, at the time, the most harmless way was just to slit its throat, but we all know that's still gonna cause some pain.
Yeah.
So so he will understand if like it's out of your control. If that you can get to the very bottom, very minimum amount of a something. Like
Yeah, but
again, a blank.
the Bible doesn't say just take the very minimal amount of blood. It says abstain from blood. So if it says abstain from blood, wouldn't that mean no blood, not just the littlest amount? Because if you consciously know that there is white blood cells in milk, and the Bible says to abstain from blood, wouldn't you consciously drinking that milk be breaking the Mosaic law?
Again, like for the Mosaic Law, again, if we're supposed to kill animals in the most harmless way, according to the Mosaic Law, and there's still gonna be some pain to the animal back in those days, or even now. there you can't really say that. Oh well, that therefore debunks the entirety of the Mosaic Law or anything like that
That's not what I'm
because
saying. I'm saying
okay,
it is going against what is written in the Mosaic Law that you brought up in Leviticus 17:14, where it says abstain from blood, and in Acts 15:20. And
okay,
if you consciously drink the milk, then you are consciously breaking those laws, are you not?
yeah, but
Because you are
as I
consuming the white blood that, according to JW doctrine, says you cannot consume because it is not a fraction of that. It is a whole white cell. So yes or no, would that be breaking the Mosaic law? That's the question.
I mean I don't want to be rude, but I've answered that question a
No,
couple times, but maybe I'm
you didn't. You kind of threw just a red herring at me. That
okay.
something adjacent, that a different law in the Mosaic law that doesn't apply to this law.
I mean, okay. I mean, I was just Naji, but okay. So if we, like, for example, if it's completely out of our control, like if we really love milk, such as me, and you kind of, and you're kind of left to like a couple, like in the hundreds of blood cells, so not that much.
Okay, well, can I bring up something to you then?
Oh yeah,
If
sure.
let's put this aside, okay? Let's say that, okay, the Mosaic law says to abstain from blood, correct?
Yes,
And breaking that law would be defiling God's, wishes, correct?
of course.
Okay, can you turn to Leviticus 24:9 for me real quick? I want to read that real quick. I want you to read that out loud for me real quick. Leviticus
Okay,
24 verse 9.
okay. It will be, it will, it will become Aaron and his sons, and they will take, and they will eat and eat it in a holy place because it is something most holy from Jehovah. For for him from Jehovah's offsprings, made by fire as a lasting regulation.
Okay, so it's saying that Aaron and his sons can eat this bread in a holy place because it is holy for him from Jehovah's offerings, correct? Because they are the priests. So under Mosaic law, they are the only ones allowed to eat this bread, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now, can you turn to Mark 2:25 to 27 and read that out loud to me real quick?
Okay, Mark 2:25.
Yep, to 27.
Oh boy. Also, no one puts new wine
Or sorry,
into
sorry,
old
sorry,
wine.
sorry, sorry, 25 to 27.
Oh, but he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need, when he was hungry, when he and the when he and the men were hungry? How about in the account of Abiathar, the chief priest? He entered the house of God and ate loaves of presentation, which is not lawful for anyone except a priest. And he also gave some to the men who were with him. Then he said, the Sabbath came into existence for the sake of man, and man not for the sake of the Sabbath."
So that scripture shows that under special circumstances, breaking Mosaic law is okay. So couldn't that be applied to the Piqua Nefesh teaching, where life over law, where
Uh,
under special circumstances, especially life and death, uh, life can be preserved over, or should be taken into account firstly, other than the Mosaic law. Wouldn't that be logical to assume, considering that there's a scriptural evidence of special circumstances?
well, I'm not sure if this will be a good answer or not, but that's what blood fractions are for. That's why we allow blood fractions.
That's because under special circumstances.
Yes.
Can you explain the connection to that?
Um. So instead of doing blood as a whole, also like it's been quite a while since I've last checked on this, but in Enjoy Life Forever, we also read that yeah, you can in some certain circumstances, yeah, you can take some blood that's been modified, but as long as it's from your body.
You can take blood that's been modified as long as it's from your own body.
I apologize. I apologize if that was a stupid response.
Well, my
Uh,
question is I'm confused. I'm arguing the biblical stance, not what the organization's stance is.
okay. Well,
So that again, another red herring that doesn't really tie to the overall question at hand.
okay.
Um,
Mm.
I mean, tying back into the blood fractions issue again, I still haven't seen enough. The thing is, it's not even that they just changed the doctrine, which again makes no sense. That somehow God changed his mind after a while, and of course they're gonna say, obviously they say that our understanding of the scriptures have changed. Yeah, but this is a pretty big change. This isn't something that's just. And again, think. Okay, can I give you an analogy?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But can I answer?
Yes, of
Okay.
course. No, please speak.
So to answer you, I would respond with the change as the governing body is not infallible. It's prone to error.
What? Is that it?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having some technical different some stuff going on here, so I might have to occasionally mute myself.
So they are fallible and not immune to error. That is what you're saying. Of course, I mean
So yeah,
of course that's true. Yes, they're just men. But don't you think that,
yeah.
especially at the head of the organization, they should be incredibly careful and incredibly, like, uh, carefully examining the scriptures, and like they should have caught this day one. Like this is a day one thing that they should have understood. But no, they demonized it in the past, and not to mention they have not even made a single reparation for the changing of the doctrine. They changed it, didn't apologize for, oh sorry, we actually had this wrong. That was never happened. And let me give you an analogy, okay? Imagine this. Uh Two JW parents, okay? Their sons are in a car accident. All right? They get to the hospital. The doctors are like, your sons need blood, they need hemoglobin or they're going to die. And of course the parents, the blood doctor says, "Oh, abstain from blood, no blood." Okay? Anyways, long story short, the local news is involved. We got witnesses down at the hospital with the boys, and they're saying they're like protesting in support of the boys, that like they're strong for staying and listening to Jehovah, and and everything's going good, and then one of the sons dies. Okay, and then at in the local congregation, he's celebrated for sticking close to his faith, and he's celebrated for staying faithful to Jehovah even at the end. 2 days later, at the Sunday meeting in the Watchtower now says you can now take hemoglobin. Can you imagine the conscience on not only the whole congregation, but on that parents? They're like, what are they supposed to do? Go to the doctor and be like, actually, now you can give blood to this son. And not
Uh,
only that, think about how guilty that other son would feel, that he is the one who lived and his brother was the one who died.
so I assume that actually happened because that's a pretty specific analogy. So to answer you, for one, if that did happen, I'm very sorry that happened.
No,
But
that's not a personal analogy. That's just an analogy.
okay.
But I will say that I think that, you know what? I don't think it is proven that blood transfusions are medically safe practices, and I think saying that the health risks are not, that should not be, or I think the health risks are not nearly as catastrophic as you say they are, because I think that they are not. You can look at studies, like they are not as high as you say they are. They are not as much higher as any other medical practice at
Mm.
at that same level. And not to mention, uh when most blood transfusions are administered, it's mostly in life or death scenarios. And I don't and also during transplants, which, if you did not know, most of the time when transplants are when blood is needed for transplants, it's not It's because they cannot. They're removing an organ and they cannot close the blood vessels that are constantly bleeding until the new organ is put in. And a lot of those surgeries cannot be bloodless, and there has not been a lot of like liver transplants, for example. There's only been 12 done in Canada in the last 60 years. Like, that is not a huge number considering there's millions that are done.
So you brought up some really good points, and to answer you, one, yes, the risks are as bad as I have put them. It's 50%, and two, yeah, of course, but oh, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. I apologize. I have to mute myself every 5 seconds.
That's all right.
But you actually gave re- you actually gave really good points. So to answer that, we would have to first of all, again, like my analogy with the Mosaic Law, it, if you have to kill an animal in the most harmless way, and back in that day it was nearly impossible to kill an animal completely painlessly, there would still be us, and it's out of your control. Then yeah, you would have some exception.
Yeah, that's that. I would like what?
Uh, okay, so what exactly did you not understand?
Any of what you just said. It just sounds
Okay,
like you're repeating points that you've already brought up.
okay. Well, I'm not at my best right now, so I would like to apologize for my bad reasoning. But as I said, like back with the Mosaic Law, um, if we again look at it, if you're supposed to kill an animal, if it's out of your control and some blood still gets in, well, it's not your fault because that was out of your control.
If blood is in the meat, yeah, but the atonement for that isn't. Wait, what? Again, those can be special circumstances, can't they?
Of course.
So wouldn't that not contribute? And again, it's a completely different part of the Mosaic Law. It's not about this. This is about something completely different. These are special
Right.
circumstances.
It's an analogy, but okay.
All right. Well, I mean, unless you've got anything else, I've given essentially what I've came here to say.
Yeah. Same. For one, I probably should have waited a little bit to actually prepare, but
Dude, I gave you a
yeah,
week, bro.
I know, bro. But I had to do some other stuff because this semester was ending, so I kind of had to finish all my assignments in a week. So I was more put on that.
Okay. Okay. So what now? Closing statements or Q&A or what?
I mean, Q&A would sound nice if because there's an audience of two people.
All right. Well, let's do. I'm cool. Cool Q&A if you are.
I guess it's only gonna be Tripic doing it, but oh, not Phantom. So
I guess nobody has questions. Okay.
yeah.
Hello, hello.
Oh, there we go. How come the
Okay.
Mosaic Law allows a provision for breaking the blood prohibition under the circumstances?
Well,
Well,
we are not
so,
under the Mosaic law anymore.
well,
Okay, that's not what the question
advanced.
was, though. That was the question
Yeah.
was, how come the Mosaic Law allows a provision for breaking blood prohibition under certain circumstances? He didn't say, "Is Jehovah's do Jehovah's Witnesses follow the Mosaic Law?" Are these questions for me or for him? I'm so confused.
Actually, yeah. Please specify.
The questions, I believe, are for him. And, I mean, they are addressing his point. So,
Yeah. So to answer Trippic, which that's a pretty good point. I would say it's only under certain circumstances, such as if it's out of your
Guys here.
control.
Hello?
Howdy.
Hey, Young. Hey, yeah, so that was for you witnessing. How come the Mosaic Law allows a provision for breaking the blood prohibition in some circumstances?
But if it's out of your control or it's almost impossible, I would say that's the answer.
How come it lets you eat an animal and its blood under some situations? I should clarify my question.
Um, I would say like you cannot kill. You cannot 100% remove the blood from anything.
No. It allows you to eat the animal that hasn't been bled under some circumstances. Why does it allow a provision for that?
Uh, I I didn't get your last part because I'm not that smart. So to
Can you
repeat
hear
it.
me all right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in some situations, and either an Israelite or a foreigner living in Israel under the Mosaic Law can eat an animal that hasn't been bled. Why is that provision allowed or available for Jews under the Mosaic Law if there is an absolute abstinence on blood?
Um, I mean, I would have to look more into that. If it's somewhere in the Bible, I would like a verse. But eh,
Leviticus 17, Leviticus 17:15.
okay, Leviticus 17:15 and the very Leviticus 17. You said.
Yeah.
If any man, whether a native or foreigner, eats an animal found dead or torn by a wild animal, then he must wash his garments and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And so, as, I mean, as long as the new actually, I'm gonna switch from New World Translation
Read
because so
read the
what?
surrounding context. Read the surrounding context because there's actually a prohibition against doing that exact thing. But under some circumstances it's allowed. And what I'm asking for is what kind of circumstances would allow this? Because if you read the surrounding context, it's directly in the context of having banned blood, right? From like verse 10 or 11 through to 17.
Yeah. So again, I mean the very last verse clarifies, but that's such a really good question. So if we look at the context, uh, if we just see an animal found dead or torn by a wild animal, I would assume that would be the reasoning. Or am I not getting you correct?
You're cutting out a little bit. What did you say?
Uh, so I would argue that in Leviticus 17, and I apologize if I didn't get your question correctly, but if we go to verse 15 and we see if anyone, whether a native or foreigner, eats an animal found dead or torn by a wild animal, I would assume that would be the circumstance and what should be done in
Okay,
that
but this contradicts
circumstance.
this contradicts the law in Deuteronomy 14:21. Can you read that?
Okay, Deuteronomy 14. Okay, so yeah, you must not eat any other animal found dead. So that's actually a really good question.
Yeah, so
Uh,
what circumstances permit eating an animal that's been found? What circumstances? Do you think life or death might be a reasonable conclusion?
uh, uh, I would have to look more into that, but I would have to say, unfortunately, I would have to concede on that.
So you would say that eating of blood of animals is permissible in some circumstances.
Well, of course, anything's permissible under some circumstances, but
Okay,
it's
so under what circumstances might it be permissible for you to accept blood? Considering the New Testament is not introducing a new law, but the context of the ban on abstinence of blood is directly relating to the Old Testament law of not eating blood.
okay. Well, for one, the New Testament verse in Acts. Well, I mean, you could argue it's bloodshed, but it doesn't say that, and it doesn't say to consume blood. It just says blood in general. So,
Yeah, but it's
Okay,
specifically
so on
talking
what basis
about.
is Acts introducing? Sorry, you go.
I was saying it's specifically talking in that verse in a sacrificial sense. It's not talking about in like in a normal blood sense. It's talking specifically about blood or animal meat or flesh that is being sacrificed to Jehovah or God. Sorry. Anyway, sorry, Triptych. You can finish your thing. Sorry for butting in.
No, the point is under the Mosaic law, there's not an absolute and non-circumstantial moratorium on the consumption of blood. Would you agree with that? You said you concede before, but would you agree with that framing of the statement?
okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, I probably would change my view on it, but if I looked at the context, but yeah, I'll take that.
I got to go anyway, but nice going, guys.
Well,
Do
thanks for
you?
whooping me.
So, are you conceding that the JW interpretation is inaccurate?
No, I'm just saying under very certain circumstances, and that's only because
Okay. Also, I
again,
would
Because
also
life
very
and death.
quickly.
Wait, didn't Triptych just say the circumstances in which the Mosaic allowed were under life and death circumstances? So how come JWs don't allow it under life and death circumstances? If you conceded that, like I'm just confused where the mix-up here is.
well, I'm currently just conceding it because I don't know the context, and I'm not sure what the actual context would be. So, taking at face value right now, at this moment, which I don't have time to read the context, I would
Okay.
concede.
So it's not necessarily that you concede, more that you aren't unable to say.
Yeah.
Can I? So remember how what's it called? Nihilus, like he brought up the scripture in Mark that talked about how Jesus made a point that if on the Sabbath someone were in a life or death situation, that they could break the Sabbath in order to sustain their life.
Yeah.
So how come we can't break certain biblical rules in order to sustain our life, like the blood doctrine? Like for example, you may not be allowed to kill someone under normal circumstances. But if they had a gun to your head, and the only option that you had were able to kill them in response to save your life, you would be allowed to, usually under normal circumstances.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. And to argue it, well,
Sorry if it's
again,
really loud when I.
that's good. Okay, so I lost my train of thought there.
I would also like to mention that other translations of the Bible, not the New World Translation, a lot of them even refer to the in Acts 15:29, where it's mentioning the blood. It's specifically mentioning consuming blood or the meat of strangled animals. It's
Okay.
again being specific on how the blood abstinence is supposed to be applied. So saying that it's just a broader thing when there's a lot of other, it's because one scripture doesn't say specifically what it is, doesn't mean all the other scriptures that do suddenly become invalid. It's like me
Okay.
if I'm constantly talking about something or writing about something and I am setting a narrative for something, I'm not going to keep bringing up this like every small detail of the fact. I'm going to be a little bit more broad because people who have read it should have an understanding of what I've been trying to say so far.
Also, could I just say one more question after you respond?
I'm done.
You can respond.
So issue comes when we look at the interlinear, which again, even if that was the intended thing, the writer of Acts should have made it way more clear. And if they were referring to eating blood, which if under your view that's what it meant, he would have said it, not just abstain from all blood in general.
Okay, again,
Wait,
aside from
can
the
I?
fact that the New World Translation is a very biased
No, I'm
rewriting,
going off I'm going off the interlinear, but okay.
interlinear.
Yeah, not kingdom interlinear, but
As the script, the Greek. I'm saying from the Greek.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It is true that it says abstain, but the thing is that it's definitely referencing, if you look at the surrounding context of that scripture, the prohibition against such things from the Mosaic Law. It's referencing the Mosaic Law. Like that's what it's referencing. It's Paul saying like, hey, certain things just because we're not under the Mosaic Law anymore, there are certain things that we are not allowed still, uh, such as these, and then he says that, and like just because he's vague doesn't mean that he's not saying don't eat from blood. It's definitely heavily implied that it is don't eat from blood. But anyways, yeah.
You take the text out of con, and all you're left, or take the text out of context, all you're left with is con.
Okay.
And again, why?
If you wait,
Sorry, just real quick. If let's say what you're saying is true. Let's say that abstain from blood means blood transfusions. Why are we the only ones that abstain from blood transfusions? Most Christians take blood transfusions, I would assume, I'm pretty sure take blood. Correct?
Uh, I mean, you're gonna have to ask or another Christian on the Matripic, but I probably assume he'll say yes. He would accept a blood transfusion.
Yes. So why is it that we're the only? No, you guys can't take blood transfusions. Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Yeah, I see.
Okay. So
Okay.
okay. So I mean that would kind of be like I mean it sounds dumb, but then again, like the same reason like we deny the Trinity, it's because we believe that I mean it's dumb. It sounds dumb, but I mean it really sounds dumb and I'll probably get my ass whooped by some Christians here, but okay. So
can I
I would have
ask a
to
question?
say what?
I just wanted to ask a question because you said something in your rebuttal that, or sorry, rather, I don't think you addressed something in your rebuttal, or I don't know, maybe it was something that I detected that wasn't rebutted in Nihilis's also rebuttal or whatever. But anyways, I just wanted to ask a question about it.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
he brought up in either his rebuttal or opening statement that you can that you drink like white milk or whatever, or might have been the open discussion
A
area,
rebuttal.
but you drink you said or you drink white milk, and so then thus you are consuming the white blood cells of a cow, which would be prohibited.
Under
Yeah,
the
almost done.
Mosaic Law, correct.
Almost done. Almost done.
Could you repeat your last part? My audio glitched. Could you repeat your last part?
Me?
Uh, Pano.
Sorry, hold on. Sorry, someone was just talking to me. I have to basically. So you said you don't. You declared that it was a special circumstance for you to drink milk because you want to. So you're making an exception to the rule because you want to, uh, because you like white milk. But people aren't allowed to make an exception to the rule under life and death circumstances. That seems very petty and like hypocritical.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, if it's like if you do your like absolute best to not go any, like it's gonna be almost impossible to not take at least very minimal amounts of blood, even trace amounts. So
Again, no, it's not. Be a vegetarian. Don't drink milk.
Yeah, just
Don't.
don't drink milk. That's
There,
not hard.
you can
Like
do
you,
things
you can
to
make a like
avoid
you
doing
can
it,
yeah,
but
but who
you
would
can
like to
make a
ask
you are
yourself?
lifestyle
consciously.
choice.
Just wait, Anthony. You are consciously choosing to do it. So saying that there
If
isn't
you wait, you
anything.
believe in free will, right? Like you believe in free will that you have the choice to drink white milk or not, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are actively choosing using your free will against God, right? And saying that I'm going to continue to choose to do this thing that I know is against God or what you believe is against God, and thus like that's actively breaking the rules according to what you believe, and you won't apply that same like you won't lend that hand to people when they are bleeding out because they just got into a car accident or when they're needing a safe any alternative to save their life. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like maybe like first of all, you have to keep in mind like not everyone can afford alternative methods, right? But that's even besides the point because it's still blood. Like if you're no matter how much you break it up, it's still blood. Like you know what I mean? Like even if you're using like certain pieces of white blood cells to like anyways, that's besides the point. But you see what I mean, right? Like how come you get to make a excuse when you just because you want to, but then when it comes to life and death situations, they're not allowed to.
Okay. Well, here's my question to you: do the goods outweigh the bads? If we're going under the JW view,
So
would you?
consequentialist, but like that, you realize that makes no sense
Does
Okay.
because
saving does
you're
saving
still you're
what?
still saying that the good of drinking milk outweighs the bad of like what like it being eternally I don't know I guess you're not eternally dead but like
No,
everlasting cutting off
like okay, okay.
like
Here,
and how wouldn't it be the same because wouldn't under God's eyes like you have to
Wait. Listen. Do you think that God do you think that God would be more understanding of you taking blood in a
Sorry,
life or death
I had to
scenario?
mute. Wits let's let Witsoning answer the questions first. Yes, I guess.
We are asking questions right now, bro.
I
What?
mean it's okay, but so I don't think I stated myself correctly. So just drinking like it's trace amounts, like a couple. It's only a couple thousand per like very small amount. Like it's very small trace amounts, and yeah, you won't get eternally condemned for just taking a smell.
Okay, again, uh the scriptures do not say abstain from what you can of blood. It says abstain from blood. So using the argument that there's still trace amounts in it is invalid considering that again, you can just not drink milk. That is something that is very real and not a hard thing to do. And you can become a vegetarian. A lot of the population are vegetarians, and so that brings out the option of eating meat at all. And again, uh, like it just makes no sense. And again, you do you think that God would be more forgiving if you have to take blood in a life or death scenario, or if you're just casually drinking milk with blood cells. Which one do you think you'd be more forgiving in? Is that your most vulnerable point? You take blood to save your life, or that in your day to day you're just casually drinking milk with blood cells in it?
Mm, As I said, because as I said, the Tripic. Uh oh, I lost my train. I mean, at this point, I would like to say that yeah, I would have to question my view on blood. So I would have to question it. So maybe a half concession, but
All right. Well, I'm done with my questions. Of you, unless you have any questions.
uh, I mean, you did just. I mean, I do have to put the blood practice in view now into question. So I would like to thank you guys for helping me put a little bit more open minded.
I would highly recommend you look up on jw.org, "Youth That Put God First." Read that article, and if you don't think that that is a grotesque article, then I am genuinely sorry for you.
Okay, what's the article named?
It's called "Youth That Put God First," or "Youth That Put Jehovah First." One of the two. I can't remember the exact phrasing that they use for it. But essentially, what it is them giving examples of children that died because they did not accept blood transfusions, and almost idolizing them for keeping that stance. And I think that is disgusting.
Mm, Unfortunately, I can find nothing on it. Although I'm gonna just.
I will find it. I will find it, and I will send it to you. Don't worry. But it was, I believe, a box in a watchtower from, I believe, the late 60s. I could be wrong about the time frame.
Okay. So
But
I would like.
my
Continues, I think his friend continues talking.
the reason that I point that out is that I think that the Watchtower society is at a point where that I think that they are held somewhat responsible and should at least they should be responsible to at least issue some sort of apology for their misinterpretation of the blood doctrine that led to the death of children, and then to promote the deaths of those children as a something that should be celebrated, and then contradicting themselves 40 years later, I think is just absolutely baffling. And the fact that no one questioned that is even crazier.
Okay.
Can you not acknowledge that should at least be acknowledged by the
Yeah,
organization?
I would like to say that that probably would need to be, but I would also have to look more into it.
Hi, this is Lady C.
So I would like to thank Niles also for this debate.
You as well. I
Uh,
think I very much enjoyed it, seeing what
yeah,
the opposing views.
I got the form up. I mean, I got whooped in this debate, so I, bro. Uh,
Pardon me.
Will teach this. Does the Bible?
uh, I got whooped in this debate, so uh, and I would like to thank you because yeah, it kind of does make me question a little bit the blood.
Oh shit!
So,
So look at that.
Yeah. Sorry. So. The brochure that I was referencing, it's called "Youths Who Put God First." It's an Awake article from May 22nd, 1994, and it depicts 26 children who refused blood transfusion and died as a result. and I would highly recommend, if you can get a copy of it, to read it. I'm not sure if it is still on jw.org. They might have removed it, but I have a feeling you could probably still find it. Or not.
Oh, well, that's why Internet Archive and JW Leaks exist.
There we go. But I highly recommend you read that, because I think that points out a gross negligence on an organization that is supposed to be doing God's will. I do think that is something that should not be overlooked in this argument. But yeah, I really really much appreciate having this debate with you. I think it was productive, and for me at least, it was nice to see. I had never actually gotten a lot of what the opposition's opposition to my stance was. So thank you for that. Appreciate it, and thank you for keeping it somewhat civil.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say, I mean, I got creamed in this debate, so, and it does call me again to question this view, so I also appreciate you for doing that.
Well, thank you. All right. There we go. So, anybody know any good jokes?
I gotta go now, but yeah, it was a good debate. Thank you.
You.
Sorry if I didn't let you respond. I wasn't trying to like at all, like hassle you. I just wanted to get an answer. Is that hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, you. Sorry. Thank you for the debate. Just wanted to say thank you. I gotta go now though.
Well, and that's just the debate mod, Nihilus, and witnessing the truth.
What?
Oh, nothing. Just our debate mod and us.
Okay, so who do you think is going to get North and South America? The Jehovah's Witnesses or the Seventh-day Adventists in paradise?
Could you repeat the question?
So who do you think is going to get North and South America in paradise? Us, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, or Seventh-day Adventists?
Bro, there won't be what?
I think he just made a joke there.
Just making a joke.
Yeah, he just made a joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm tired, man. That's why I'm sorry.
All right, I'm gonna go.
Okay, see ya. Great debate.
Yeah, you too, man. And that is how you school a Jehovah's Witness, my friends.